A lot of us are looking for ways to start our day feeling more joy and appreciation. And while some of us write gratitude lists or do yoga, others pour themselves a bowl of their favorite cereal, Honey Nut Cheerios. Because not only are Honey Nut Cheerios delicious, they can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet. So maybe the secret to a great mood all day is a little yoga, then writing your gratitude list over a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. Learn more about a heart-healthy lifestyle at Cheerios.com. If you've been a renter, you know it's stressful to find the perfect place. But Zillow Rentals make it easy. They have filters for pretty much everything, so you can find a rental that's big enough for entertaining your friends, but small enough they won't crash all weekend. Find your sweet spot on ZillowRentals.com.
And it's like, okay, I'm finally up here, and I look off into the distance, and off in the distance I could see these 3 dots, and I wasn't sure at first, are they sastrugi, or they're just something out there, or is that the South Pole Station, because there's a research center there.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Gravely. Actually, I'm not the host today. This is a throwback episode, and Travis, who used to be one of the hosts, he's actually hosting this episode. It's from 2017, and we're talking about fat biking to the South Pole. And fat biking is just, those bikes with really large tires to be able to ride over difficult terrain. A lot of different benefits to that. But and one of those benefits is being able to ride on snow and on ice and ride to the South Pole, which is pretty crazy. And Daniel Burton, who we're talking to today, was the first person to do that. It was a very first, which is really cool to think about and really cool to accomplish. And so even if you don't have aspirations to do an adventure on the ice or on the snow or in some sort of cold environment like this, it's still, the lessons are there. The principles are there of adventure and getting out there and being more adventurous and doing something out of the box. Very excited to get into this episode. But before we do, I did want to give a shout out to Rerouted, the sponsor of today's episode. Rerouted is where you go if you need to buy or sell used gear online. This is outdoor gear, camping stuff, clothing, footwear, all anything that has to do with adventure sports that is used gear. Go through Rerouted. So if you've got stuff in your closet that you don't use that you think someone could use, go to their website, rerouted.co. It's also in the show notes. And you'll be able to learn more there and how you can make some, get some extra cash and help someone else go on an adventure or use it to do that adventure sport. Or if you're looking to buy stuff, browse their website. They've got all kinds of stuff. And the beauty about it is you're keeping stuff out of landfills. You're saving a ton of money because I don't know if you've seen the price of just about anything right now. It's very expensive. So buy used as much as possible. And 3, it's probably pretty unique, which I always love. If I have a jacket or a shirt that I know probably, no one else is ever going to have just because I got it used, that's also pretty cool. So check out rerouted.co to see their selection and get ready for your next adventure. All right, here's the episode.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Adventure Sports Podcast. This is Travis. Today on the line with me is Daniel Burton. This guy found himself in his early 40s and decided that sitting down at a desk job and being a computer programmer might not be the best way to live out life and have the best of health. So he had a few checkups at the doctor, and it kind of sparked him into picking up mountain biking as a hobby. Ultimately, Daniel went on to ride some pretty serious races from Utah out into Jackson, Wyoming, and then ultimately had the big goal to ride his mountain bike from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole, which is about 750 miles. So we're going to talk to Daniel and see what sparked all of this and talk to him about his expedition and see how it all went. So first of all, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's dive into it. For starters, I alluded to health being a reason why you got into mountain biking. So tell me about that. Obviously, you weren't riding at the time, and something sparked you to get into taking up the hobby. So let me in on that.
Yeah, they had one of those health fairs at work where they drew blood for a cholesterol test, and they took my blood pressure and couldn't believe my blood pressure was so high. And when the blood test came back, it showed I had really bad cholesterol numbers, and so I kind of panicked there for a bit.
Yeah, I imagine. A lot of us get on with our daily lives and end up sitting down at desk jobs. And if you don't, maintain an active lifestyle, you do. It might surprise you. You go to a doctor someday, and he's sitting there telling you, "Hey, get out and be active." So, well, that's a good thing that it sparked this for you. So, what made you pick up bike riding itself? I mean, why not something else?
I needed to do something that I would enjoy, and I had done some mountain biking before, but not a lot. And there were people that I worked with that were into mountain biking, and then also my son's scout troop. They decided to do a 100-mile bike ride around Canyonlands, White Rim Trail, and I volunteered to go in and be one of the adult leaders for that, and that was my first big mountain bike ride.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, White Rim Trail. It's on my list of rides to do. How was that?
It's awesome. We like to do it anymore about once a year, close to the summer solstice. We do a night ride where we'll go full moon and just ride the whole thing at night with no lights, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Definitely a cool trip.
Yeah, start at 6 o'clock at night and finish about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Well, out in Moab, that's a time to ride, too.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
No doubt. A little cooler at night. So when you got into riding, you said you had gone and helped support this White Rim ride, but how active were you? I mean, was it just hobby riding, or did you kind of get into races or at least long distance stuff in the beginning, or just transition to that ultimately?
I mostly just ride for the fun of it. The races I've done are more that I do them just to see if I can finish them, not because I'm competing for winning or anything. Mm-hmm. And so just the guys I was riding with, we were riding, at least an hour a day, pretty much 6 days a week, and going from not very much to doing that all the time. It killed me, but it's really hard to keep up with these guys because they were really good mountain bikers, and so doing that. And then I started doing these 100-mile mountain bike races and 200-mile road bike races. So
okay. So let's go back to you and your health, I guess. I mean, you weren't like sickly and dying or anything like that, but I think that a lot of people could probably relate to the situation. So go in a little bit more about kind of what point in life you were at. I mean, was it, we're talking a couple pounds overweight, just felt like you needed to shed it, or was it something that truly was a serious issue?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a serious issue. My mom died a year before I went to Antarctica from cholesterol, basically from heart issues, and so it's something that I think eventually would have killed me. I who knows? I mean, life is you never know what's coming, but I'm pretty sure that my biking saved me from that. I was overweight. I wasn't like obese or anything, but I was overweight. I lost I think 20, 25, 30 pounds. Okay. I really got into biking. So, I was enough that I had that much that I could lose. And so I was a little bit overweight and really just the bad cholesterol number was high and the good cholesterol number was low. And I just knew I had to do something about that.
Yeah, right. Well, I think that, I'm glad I asked that because, like I said, I think a lot of people can identify with that. And there might be, stories of people that are 100 pounds overweight. And, a lot of people would think, well, there's just absolutely no way. Why bother trying? But that's a little bit more extreme. For people that, have 15, 20, 25 pounds on them, I think a lot of us find ourselves in that position, especially midlife. So I love the story that you can bring that basically explains that, hey, you too can do this, if you find yourself in this situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I was kind of researching you, and the Latoha, is that how you pronounce it? What is it?
Lodija.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, the people in Logan seem to call it Latoja. but Lotaja, because it's Logan to Jackson.
Oh, duh. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I guess if I thought about it, Logan to Jackson, it would make sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what that ride is, because you did it quite a few times, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of in Utah and kind of in this area. It's the biggest, the bike race ride that everybody wants to do. So you drive around and you see the Lotaja stickers on everybody's car that's done it, because it's that big accomplishment to be able to actually complete that thing. So it's a 200-mile bike race. It starts in Utah and ends at Jackson Hole in Wyoming. So right there at the Tetons, very beautiful.
And this is a single day event.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of riding in one day. Now, how's the terrain? Is this just a road race?
Yeah, it's a road race, but it goes over 3 mountain passes, and so there's a lot of climbing in it. It depends. Usually some good headwinds in places. You were usually starting really early in the morning, so before sunrise, and a lot of times below freezing when you start, but then it can be like extremely hot by the middle of the day, and so so it can be tough that way. I tend to have problems with getting cramps in my legs from trying to cycle in that cold start. So yeah, it has a lot of fun challenges.
Yeah, I imagine the temperature variations are wild too. I mean, this is September time of year, right?
Yeah. So usually it's cold enough in the morning you need something on your legs and your arms, but by the time you are in the middle of the race, it's probably hot enough that you wish you could shed off everything you could. But they did have one year where it snowed on them pretty bad, and they had to I think like more than half of the people in the race, it was the year before I started, half the people in the race had to be pulled off with ambulances because they were all suffering from hypothermia because it got cold.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so that was the legendary year of how bad it was, and I started the year after, fortunately.
Lucky you. Okay, so you go from not riding at all to a little bit of riding to graduating into the Logan to Jackson race, and eventually at some point you have this wild idea to go down to Antarctica and ride from the coastline to the South Pole. So I mean, most people don't have these kind of ideas. Usually it's I'm going to work up through for various long distance races and I'll do that and see how I do. But you kind of made this grand leap to doing something like this. So what brings a thought like that on?
Well, so I had a bike shop so after I got laid off at work, my company, they moved all the work out to India. And so I got laid off. And when I got laid off, I decided to open up a bike store instead, so I could try to give back and help other people get the kind of health benefits from cycling that I got. And so I was doing that. And then eventually these fat bikes started becoming popular, bikes with these 5-inch wide tires. And so when they really, it was just kind of, they were just starting to take off. And so I decided to get a couple of them and start renting them out so that we could bike really well during the winter, not just a summer sport, but make it a really good winter sport also. And that's when I learned about Eric Larson. And Eric Larson was attempting to be the first person to bike to the South Pole. So he started the same place that I started and biked. He made it about a quarter of the way before he decided that he needed to turn around, and he turned around and went back. But as I looked at his expedition and stuff, it's like, it took me quite a while studying and trying to figure out why he didn't make it, because it seemed like it was working. It seemed like it was possible to do it. And so it kind of built up from that. But yeah, it wasn't something, I had long-term desire to do this. It's just like I found out about Eric doing it, and then I had this other guy that'd come in my bike store all the time say, "Oh, we're going to win the lottery, and then we'll be able to afford to go do this." And he kept talking about that, and at first I thought, yeah, no way, that's not something I would do. But eventually it just kind of clicked, and it's like something that I couldn't stand not doing, if that made sense.
Yeah, I guess. That's what I was going to ask is, I don't want it to sound stupid, but what made you think you could do this? I mean, this would be the first person, you were the first person to conquer this. So was it one of those, was it a thought like, well, I will do this? Are you that type of person? Just that, when I set my mind to it, I will do this? Or were you just thinking, you know what, somebody else has had the idea and has tried it, and you know what, I think I can actually get further than them?
Well, once I decided I was going to do it, it was everything. I had to do it, and I studied a lot on different expeditions, and I determined that if I was going to do it, I had to do it with the attitude that I was going to be successful. And so I very purposefully only talked about being successful, and I got a little bit of some nasty comments on the internet as I was trying to raise awareness so I could try to raise funds to be able to do this. And so as I was talking about it, I got people that were, kind of saying bad things to me because of thinking I was being cocky or, being overconfident and everything. But it was something I was doing intentionally, not because I was trying to be proud and confident, cocky about it, but I wanted to be confident about it. I had to make sure that if I was doing this, if I failed to make it to the South Pole, it wasn't because I quit.
Right.
And that was very important to me. So I made that as a very conscious effort to not talk about I'm going to try to do this, but that I was going to do it.
Well, it makes complete sense. I mean, who's going to set their mind to riding to the South Pole, but talk as if they may or may not do it? I mean, you can't even do that to yourself. You couldn't afford it. I mean, if you even have a thought in your mind that you might not make it, then why bother starting in the first place, I would think.
Yeah, it's harder than anybody can possibly imagine. I think the only people that have any idea of how hard it is to do an expedition to Antarctica are people that have actually done it. I mean, it's incredibly difficult. And so, I look and I look at read a lot of blogs from different expeditions and the ones that fell and the ones that succeed. And one of the problems that seems to occur frequently with the ones that fail is before they go, they are making contingency plans for failure. And I just don't think you can do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I mean, it's got to be, and you describe it, it's got to be extremely difficult physically. But I imagine the mental aspect of it is got to be as hard or even harder than the physical aspect.
Yeah, that's what people say, that that mentally it is more difficult than the mental aspect can be more difficult. There must be something wrong with me because mentally, some of those things like, you're alone. I was 100% alone, all by myself for 51 days, and being alone is a thing that is very difficult for people to do that. I mean, you can do that for a certain amount of time, but after a while that really starts to play with you mentally. And so I expected that to be a problem going into it, but for me, for some reason, I missed my family and I wanted to get back and be with my family, but it wasn't the mental trial that I thought that way. But yeah, I think that this idea that you got to keep going was a mental challenge that I think I just, I worked really hard before I left to make sure I would be ready to do it.
Right. I guess when I think of it, I can do alone well. I like alone. I can handle that. But when I think of being alone out in the middle of Antarctica with, the winds howling and nothing but snow and ice around you and the sun up all day long, and when I think of being alone out in those conditions, that's a completely different alone.
Yeah. And I didn't think the sun being up 24 hours a day would be as much of a challenge for me as it was, because I can sleep just about any time, any place. I think I have a sleep disorder, but that actually did cause problems for me. I don't know how much of it was just that the sun was always up, and how much of it was, just if you get in that overtrained, over exercising state, then it becomes really hard to sleep also. And so the combination of the two and everything, I was having a hard time getting the sleep that I needed.
Yeah, I'm sure. I would have a problem myself. So let's talk about the planning and training. And this is not something to be taken lightly. Obviously, there's a lot of logistics that go into it. So go into that a little bit for me, if you would.
Yeah, well, fortunately, so there's one company that if you're doing an expedition in Antarctica, there's one company that you go through to do that. It's Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions, and so it's everybody that's doing an expedition is working through them. They are the company that makes it so that expeditions in Antarctica can happen, and so they've got a lot of experience with a lot of expeditions and stuff. But obviously, they didn't have any. The only experience they had with a biking expedition was Eric Larson's. And so, at least of this type. And so there wasn't a lot of specific information for what you would need to do this as far as biking. But, they had a lot of, here's the gear and here's the stuff you need to do this if you're going to do it on skis. And so I went from their suggestion of here's what you need for skiing, and then just modified that for, well, obviously I don't need ski boots, I don't need skis, I don't need, these things, but instead I need, and try to figure out what I need bike wise. And so there was that as far as getting the right gear and everything. And then I did a lot of reading. I mean, I studied every blog I could find out there of people that had done something like that. And then beyond that, I mean, I was in a state physically where I'm doing all these 200-mile bike rides and 100-mile mountain bike rides and stuff like that. And so physically, I was in good enough shape that wasn't a problem. But the one thing that I did need to do was get used to the fat bike, because on a fat bike, the pedals are further apart than on a normal bike, just to make room for the wheels and everything. And so you've got a wider stance, and just wanted to make sure that, my joints and everything would be used to that change in bike. And so right. for that year before I left, I exclusively rode my fat bike. I didn't ride my road bike. I didn't ride my mountain bike. All I rode was my fat bike, and I rode it everywhere I could.
Now, did you do a lot of winter training in Utah?
No, because when I decided, when the idea really took hold with me, I think was like in February, and I left in November to go. So basically, I didn't have winter it was the end of winter by the time I decided I was going to do this. And so I didn't have a winter to train with. Ideally that would be nice. And it would be nice to go off and go somewhere and train and stuff. But I knew that if I was going to do this, Eric had already tried. And so it's obvious somebody's going to try to do this. And so if I wanted to do this, I figured I had to do it, that year. And so I didn't think I had the luxury of having time to figure out when to do this. And so I just had to, I had to do it then. And then I was active all through the winter riding and doing stuff anyway. And so, but I just didn't have a lot of experience riding a fat bike, like in, conditions that I would find in Antarctica.
Right. Well, that adds an extra element of difficulty to it, though. That's impressive. You didn't waste any time.
Yeah, well, and I didn't have any polar experience either. And there's a lot of things you need to know to do a good polar expedition. And fortunately, ALE, the expedition company, they actually work out of Salt Lake, and I live not far from there. And so they were able to come to my bike store and spend half a day with me, going over and talking about all these different things, and giving me some stuff and basically telling me, okay, this is what you got to do to be successful. And so I got a lot of good information from them. And like they said, the first few days are going to be a big learning curve. You're going to, it's on the job training.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible.
Your AC works overtime all summer, so be sure to replace your old air filters with new Filtry air filters. They recommend updating HVAC filters at least every 3 months all year round. So order your Filtry air filters today at Filtry.com. Let's clear the air.
Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
So let's talk about your setup then. Now, you did this alone, but it wasn't necessarily unsupported because you had food drops. But otherwise, you were out there by yourself. You had a bike and a sled, right?
Yeah, I had my bike and I had 2 sleds I was pulling behind me. And so that the sleds are ones that are designed for that kind of thing, but they're basically kind of look like plastic sleds you might buy at Walmart. And then I also had panniers on my bike. And so Eric had done it with panniers and no sled. And so I was looking at his, and one of the things when I was looking at his expedition, one of the biggest problems is the headwind. You're looking at typically a 20 to 40 mile an hour headwind as you're doing this, and so those pannier bags can be a lot of wind resistance. So my thought was that by having it in a sled instead, that I could be a little bit lower and a little bit more out of the wind with my gear and maybe go a little bit better. I don't know if wind-wise if the sleds are really better than that or not, but I had the panniers, I had the sleds, and I had the ability to try a bunch of different things. So those first the first week or so, I'm trying different things. I'm trying to put all my gear that I can in the panniers and leave the sleds real light, and that didn't work too good. I tried putting all the gear in one sled, and so I just tried different arrangements, and what it after playing around with it for a while, it just became the way that worked best for me was to distribute weight into 2 sleds so that it would slide a little bit higher on the snow, wouldn't sink into the snow as much, and to keep as much weight off the bike as possible.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Now, you talk about sinking into the snow. I'm trying to imagine, I think we all have an image in our head of what Antarctica might look like, which is probably completely wrong, at least in my case. So paint the picture for us. What conditions, what was the snow like, the wind like, the temperatures like? What was it like to be riding to the South Pole?
Yeah, it's really amazing. At the beginning, you start on, I started on the coast, or you wouldn't know that it's the coast. Where I started was actually on the ocean, and so, but the ocean's frozen there. Mm-hmm. So it's just white, and then this pretty steep hill with mountains around. And so to start out with, it's kind of soft snow. It's stuff that, like, if you at the beginning, I had to push a lot because it was uphill. It was pretty steep, and the snow was really soft, and so it was just hard to get enough traction and float to be able to make it up the hill. So that first few days was almost exclusively pushing the bike. I did ride, whenever I could, but those first few days is mostly pushing. And so it's snow that, like, if you're walking in it, you're going to sink in maybe a foot or two.
Oh, wow.
And so it's, it's softer at the beginning, but then as you get inland, in the interior a little bit more, the sun, as it goes around, it kind of turns that snow into ice. And so the later in the year you go, the harder the conditions are and the better it is to ride. But it also means you have less time to be able to finish it. So there's kind of a balance between how early do you go versus, and so it's a bunch of different payoffs. But once you get past the mountains that are there near the coast, the best I can say is it's kind of like being out in the middle of the ocean, and you have these big swells, and instead of being frozen, or instead of liquid swells, they're just frozen. And so it's just a lot of up and down and up and down, just over and over and over. But there may be like, I probably guess like a mile or so between peaks of the swells. And so it was really cool riding back. When you look back and you look, and it looks a lot like when you're flying in a plane and you look down and you just see the, if you've ever flown in a jet and you look down and you just see the clouds when it's just complete cloud cover and all you can see is the clouds and it looks kind of puffy.
Yeah.
That's what Antarctica looks like from the air.
Oh,
and so it's just up and down and up and down. And so it's, as I'm riding at any time, I mean, you look in any direction and it looks like the edge of the world is like, maybe 100 yards off in any direction. And you go 100 yards in any direction and it's going to be the edge of the world and you could just chuck everything off and quit. But of course, it just keeps going on and on and on. And so a lot of just nothing but white as far as you can see.
Now, does the snow drift at all because of the winds, or is it just a hard enough crust where it's just blowing across the surface and not really drifting?
Yeah, it's drifting a lot. And so typically, about 3 or 4 feet from the ground to 3 or 4 feet up, there's just this continual progression of ice, snow, just blowing to the north, from the south to the north. And it's just like there's endless supply of snow just headed north. And so at the once you start getting closer to the middle of Antarctica, that you get to these drifts that start building up, and the drifts then, as the sun goes around, it'll harden up the snow in some places harder, better than others, just because of the angle of the sun, and then that wind keeps blowing through and carves away the stuff that doesn't get hard, and it makes what they call sastrugi, and they're like snow drifts, but they're carved away. And there's something that just doesn't exist except for in polar environments, and they're pretty spectacular, really cool, amazing formations in them, and they it starts out little ones, a couple feet high, and by the 3/4 waypoint they're like 10-15 feet high.
Okay, interesting. So the elevation gain, you started at sea level, so roughly 0 feet, and up at the the South Pole, it's 9,300 feet. So this is a continuous climb. Now, was it a lot of up and down to get there, or was it relatively kind of a slow climb out?
It's up and down a lot, and so it just constantly up and down for the most of it, and so. The amazing thing though is it never felt like I was going. Well, there are a couple places that it felt like I was going down, but for the most part, it's like you're going down, and it's like, okay, I'm working this hard, I'm pushing this hard. There's no way this is downhill, but your GPS is giving you lower and lower numbers. It's like there's just no way, and it is, and so because you're going up and down, it's just that headwind is so strong and consistent that even going downhill, it's just a hard push, a lot of work just to go downhill.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, what would you say your biggest surprise was after you got underway?
I don't know that I was really surprised by things. I knew a lot of what was going to be there. There was a lot of things I had to learn. I had to learn how to adjust my coat and gear and stuff just right to be able to continue moving on. I don't know. I don't know if there's a big surprise that way. Maybe it was after the first few days, maybe a week or so of going. It was, looking at the numbers, very obvious that I was not going to make it, because I was getting maybe 5 to 7 miles a day, and it's 100 or 750 miles. So you can see it's going to take over 100 days, and I only had around 50 days available. And so it's pretty obvious I wasn't going to make it. And I talked to my wife and said, I had a satellite phone, so I called her up and I told her I'm not going to make it. Right? It's not going to happen. But I had determined before I left that I was going to keep going no matter what. And so even though I got to the point that it's like, the numbers just show I'm not going to make it, I decided, I'm going to keep going. And my wife agreed. And then amazingly, the snow got harder and conditions, improved to where I could, it had been to the point at the beginning, it was such that I would be pedaling. I could work my way through some soft stuff, and then eventually I'd hit something that'd get me stopped. And so I'd be getting, like 100 or 200 feet at a time, and then have to get off, push out of the soft stuff, and then go again. And it's just that over and over and over. And then eventually it got, it's just like in a matter of a couple of days got to where I could, bike from getting, 200 yards to where eventually I was getting like a mile at a time. And then I started eventually getting to where after I'd get to that, I'd get to where I'd go like an hour at a time, and then I would stop and get something to eat and drink, and then continue on. So that was kind of my routine, was to bike for an hour, eat and drink, and then go again and do that all day for about 13 hours a day.
Yeah, I can imagine it's got to be disheartening to deal with that foot deep snow and have to trudge through that, just thinking, how long is this going to last? I mean, you probably had a decent awareness that things would get better at some point because the interior and the research you had done. But yeah, just to sit there and wonder how long it's going to take based on the travel that you have done in the last few days, that's got to be tough to deal with.
Yeah, and it didn't, where I thought it would start getting better, it didn't get better there. It got better, several days after. And so yeah, so that may have been the surprise. It's like all of a sudden, it's like I'm getting the distances I need. When I started getting 15 miles a day, and you start doing the calculations and stuff, okay, it's like now I'm at a pace that I can make it. And so that was a big thing for me, is when I started consistently getting 15 miles a day, and that realization that, yes, I'm going to make it. This is going to work. I'm going to be successful.
Yeah, that'll pick the spirits up. Now you had to deal with crevasses too out there, right? Yeah,
well, so the ice in Antarctica is all moving. And anytime the ice is moving and it goes over cracks, or it's moving at different rates, you're gonna create crevasses. And so the Antarctic ALE, they had used ground penetrating radar to determine where most of the crevasse, the big crevasses are. And so with the route that we had planned, went around a couple of places where there were some big crevasses. And so there was always that right at the beginning of the thing, as you're coming up off the coast, and so the ice is coming over the mountains and kind of going over that slope. It's a big place for crevasses to open up, and I was pushing my bike at that point, and I stepped down, and my legs sunk into a crevasse. And the interesting thing about it was that another guy who I actually saw, he was headed north as I was headed south. And so we'd cross paths and talked for a couple minutes just hours before, and you could see his ski tracks go right over that crevasse that since he was on skis, he was safe, but being off and pushing on the bike was a lot more dangerous because I stepped in that crevasse, I fell in.
Yeah, I imagine that'll make for a spooky moment because you don't know how that crevasse is. I mean, is it something they didn't catch, or is it something that just started to form? Am I going to go all the way through? So what happened? You stepped in the crack.
Everywhere. I mean, there's just. I mean, I know I went over thousands of crevasses. Most of them small enough that they're not an issue, and I know I went over one snow bridge that I didn't realize was a snow bridge until after I got over it and looked back, and it's like, ooh, if I'd fallen through that one, that would have been pretty nasty.
Oh man! So you fell through the crack, and I think you went up about halfway.
About
your hip.
I just fell. Yeah, just one leg fell in, and I just pulled myself out, used my bike, pulled myself up and out, and moved on past it, and because you can tell good solid ice in a lot of places because the wind blowing the snow off, you'll get a blue ice. And so I could see some blue ice ahead of where it was, and I just moved over onto that to where it would be safe. And then I looked back, and I thought it would be really cool to get a picture down the hole and see how big it was. But I was afraid to get close enough to do that because I didn't want to be in there for the rest of my life.
Right. Not a picture worth taking.
Yeah. And so I don't have a good picture of it. I have kind of a lame picture of it, but I didn't get a good picture of it because I just was not going to get close enough to. I mean, it's just not worth the risk.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. So tell me about the food or supply drops. How did that work?
Yeah. So I had scheduled 3 food drops, and so basically what they would do is they'd fly in, take the food, dig a hole, bury it, and then put a flag on it, and a black flag on it, and then they'd give me the GPS coordinates, and then I go play geocaching for life.
Yeah, that's the most important geocache you ever find, isn't it?
Yeah, and so, but it's actually pretty easy because you got the coordinates, and there's white forever, and you get this black flag sticking out, so it's pretty easy geocache to find. But yeah, so they'd fly and bury it, and leave the food for me. And so that made it so I could reduce the amount of weight I had to carry with me, because the food is a large amount of the weight that you're carrying.
Right. Well, let's talk about weight. I think a lot of people, when they start out on something, unless they have a lot of experience in it, often take too many things. And I think that you had a little bit of that yourself. I think you realized at a point you had more things than you really needed, but it's interesting that you actually took some things off of your bike to save more weight. So tell me about that a little bit. Yeah.
And so I had some rechargeable batteries that just weren't recharging because at minus 40, the chemistry just doesn't work well. So it's really hard to charge batteries when it's that cold. And so I had some extra batteries. I had more food than I was eating. I didn't have more food than I needed. I had about the right amount of food for what I needed to do, but I was just working so hard during the day and then at night, just how much I could eat. I just had a hard time eating all the food I had. And then on the bike, I had some water bottle cages on the bike. I had brakes on my bike. I had, my panniers and my rack. And so I decided I didn't need my pannier and my rack for the panniers. And I didn't need the brakes because I'm going uphill into a headwind. So the brakes, the only thing the brakes were really doing much good for me was helping me get started, which I know that sounds weird, but it helps to hold the brakes as you try to get started. And then occasionally in a whiteout you can't see anything. You can't even see. A good example was I was setting up my tent up once during a whiteout, and there was a snowdrift that was right next to my tent that I was setting it up, and I tripped over that snowdrift like a dozen times trying to set up the tent because you just can't see it.
Right. And
so you couldn't see anything in a whiteout, and so then the scary part is with the sastrugi, you're going along and there could be this 4 to 6 foot drop, and you can't see it coming. Mm-hmm. And so in a whiteout, you get to the edge of that sastrugi, and all of a sudden there it is, and you're going to fall off this big drop, and at that point having brakes could have been helpful. but I at the halfway point I took off my brakes. I took off the big chain ring on the front gear because the only gear I'm really using is my lowest gear available. I took off the bottle cages. I took off any bolts that are used for bottle cages. I took everything off my bike I could. And at the halfway point, when they're flying to the South Pole to do support and stuff, when they fly to the halfway point, they stop and they refuel, and then they go again. So they have a runway there and fuel depot and stuff. And so when I got there, I could take all the stuff off that I didn't want and all the things that I had in my gear that I decided I really didn't need, and pack that in and leave it there for them to pick up and take back so that I didn't have to take it the rest of the way. And also all the garbage from my food, because you can't leave you can't leave any garbage behind. You got to take it all with you. And so at the halfway point, I could get rid of that first half all the garbage from that first half. So that was nice too.
Yeah, they may drop the food off for you, but they don't put garbage cans out for you, huh?
Right. Yeah, but you got to take everything out that you bring in. Don't want to pollute the environment.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I know what your best moment is of this expedition, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But what would you say was the most difficult or the worst moment?
I think that day that I called my wife and told her that I wasn't going to make it, I think that was pretty difficult, pretty hard to look and say, am I a failure? I didn't make it. That was pretty difficult when it seemed pretty obvious that there was no way I was going to make it. And it's like, come on, can I be successful at something? And so that was difficult. But the one that's kind of strange to me is my last cache was at so it'd be 87.5 degrees. So 3/4 of the way there. And that last cache, when they can't just land anywhere. They have to land somewhere where the snow is smooth enough and whatever that they can actually land this plane, right? And so they found this ridge to land on, and they land on the ridge and set it there, and then they give me the coordinates. And this is at one of those spots where there are a bunch of crevasses, and so kind of a dangerous spot that I'm headed off to the west instead of going straight south. I'm going west for a ways and then turn back to the east to get back on track. And so it's, there's this kind of this triangle that I'm going around instead of going straight. And when they gave me the coordinates, I write it down and stuff, and they say, okay, and when you get there, and then the phone line dropped out because it's satellite phone, and it's Antarctica. You don't get the satellite phones are less than perfect.
A little better of the equator.
Yeah, probably. I don't know, but yeah. So the line dropped, and I didn't get to hear what they were going to tell me about when I get there. But then, as I looked at the coordinates for it, it's like, oh, hold it. This is like right in the middle of where all these crevasses are that I'm supposed to be avoiding. And so I call them back up. It's like, can you give me those coordinates again? And they gave me the coordinates, and it was the same thing. And they said, oh, and when you get there, do not head south from there because there are some big crevasses just south of where your cache is. And so,
don't say.
Yeah, and so it was like way off course for me to go over to where they were, and it was like in this place where the sastrugi were like, there was these 13, 15 foot high sastrugi that I'm having to go up and around and over to get through this kind of like a valley, and then up this really steep hill to get up to where this ridge where they left the cache. And up as I'm going up the ridge, it's like it's just riddled with these small crevasses, and so going up that and it's kind of weird because I had this this feeling that everything was going to be okay. I'm okay. I just knew I was, internally just knew that I was going to survive this whole thing and I was going to make it. But yet, as I look at that and I was listening to music on my iPod, and the one song I had was Russian Roulette by Rihanna. And I'm listening to that, and she couldn't have written a better metaphor for what I was going through if she had tried to, and that I still to this day I cannot listen to that song without just overcoming with the emotion, and just as a very emotional song for me to listen to, because it was this thing I just had to do. I had no choice. I had to go through, and this could be the end. And she says, I don't know if I'll ever see another sunrise. And I had gone almost 2 months with no sunrise, no sunset. And it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'll never see another sunrise. And that was very emotional for me.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Obviously, nothing really bad happened. I made it,
but that's going to stick with
a whole
you.
day's worth of travel towards the pole on that, because it was, to get to where it was and getting back took about a day's worth of travel out of me.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Yeah, that would stick with me for sure. Well, I want to point out that, for people that think adventure sports are for the 25-year-old, you turned 50 on this expedition, did you not?
Yeah, I turned 50 like 2 days into the expedition.
That's cool. Well, that says something for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not the big athletic, whatever type guy. I'm your computer nerd type guy. I'm not, in going out in high school, grade school, I was always not like the last person. I was literally the last person picked to be on the team every time. And I'm not, that's not an exaggeration.
Oh, that's awesome though.
And so, but the thing the point of that whole thing is that, you can do these things. You don't have to be the quarterback hero to be able to go out and do these sports and enjoy it and have fun.
Well, that's perfectly said. I mean, our show is all about inspiring people to get out there and get off the couch and do things, maybe not necessarily go to Antarctica, on a mountain bike, but get out there and do something that fulfills your life and makes it, gives it that value and provides the health at the same time. So I did want to bring that up, and I'm not calling you an old man because I'm not that far behind. But I think it's awesome and inspirational that the fact that you turned 50 years old in the middle of this expedition says a lot, about what it is we can do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, very cool. So this took roughly 50 days, right?
Yeah, 51 days.
Okay. So did you build in rest breaks, or how did that work?
When I started, for religious reasons, I would normally take Sundays off. Mm-hmm. But when I started going, it's like, I only have this much time, and I just can't afford to not go every day. So my original, the first 2 Sundays, I actually tried to go, but I tried to say, I'm going to make it a little bit easier to try to, have keep the Sabbath day holy type attitude. And so, try to make it a little easier day and just take it easy. But the reality is there's no such thing as taking it easy in Antarctica. Yeah, and right. So I failed miserably at being able to take it easy. And both of those first 2 Sundays, I ended up just quitting early because they were just extremely difficult days. The wind and whiteout conditions on those first 2 were just too difficult. And so it's like, I can't take it easy. So I just took the rest of the day off. And then every Sunday after that, I just said, and part of it, it's because I was now getting enough distance that I knew that I was going to be able to make it. And so I could afford to take those days off. And so I started taking Sundays off, and I wouldn't travel on Sundays. I'd just take them as a rest day. And I swear those the rest of the Sundays were like the best traveling days of the week. And I just committed to myself that that's what I was going to do, is I was going to take those days off and rest and recover. And so I took Sundays off.
Yeah, imagine you get to the point where you're just looking for that. You're driving towards that reward.
Yeah, I know the last week, Sunday, took Sunday off, and I think it was it might have been Monday or Tuesday, but by the end of Monday or Tuesday, I was like, oh man, I cannot wait until Sunday. Because just 13 hours. Sometimes I was doing 18, 20 hours a day on the bike, and just putting that many hours in every day, and you're just tired and just and just look forward to those breaks. So it got it was tough.
Yeah, I'll bet. How did the constant sunlight, how did you deal with that? You had to set an alarm to actually tell yourself to stop riding, right?
Yeah. So one of the things you have to do when you're doing this is you've got a satellite phone, and every day you have to call in to ALE and tell them where you are, how far you traveled, and and how long you traveled. And so they want that information. The where you are is very important because they're keeping track of where you are in case something happens and they have to come and find you. And so I have a scheduled time that I have to call them every day. And if you don't call in, then they will send out search and rescue to come and get you. And if it's not an emergency, then your insurance is not going to cover that. And it's going to be extremely expensive. And so it was very important to keep track of when the end of time to ride was and stop and set up the tent and whatever. As far as being able to tell what time it was, it's not that hard. I mean, it's that time of day because the sun is, it's traveling around in a circle. I'm headed south. So when the sun's sitting there at, like 8 o'clock, position, then you know that's you know what time it is. And so because the sun just starts in the morning, it would start on my left and it would just circle around behind me and then be on the right when I'd quit. And so, but yeah, I had to keep track. I'd set an alarm, and usually normally you don't want to sweat in Antarctica. So a lot of times you think about trying to keep warm. I'm working so hard that really the problem is trying not to get too warm. And so the problem I had is I would be sweating a lot because it's just impossible to keep going fast enough to keep the bike from tipping over. There's a certain speed you have to go so that you don't tip over. And the amount of work it took to just stay upright was enough that I was just constantly getting wet with sweat, which is not a good thing. And so typically what I would have to do is keep track of, and when I was going to quit for the day, I'd have to get off the bike and push my bike for that last hour of the day, just so that the wind and stuff. So I'm keeping up enough work. I'm working hard enough to keep from freezing to death, but bringing that level of work down enough that I can have that wind blowing through and everything dry me off before I get in the tent, because if my clothes are wet again in the morning, then that's going to be really bad.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's not something you would think about, having to have a cool down and evaporation period at the end of a day's ride. That's not something you're going to go into this expedition thinking about. It's just one of the things you have to learn.
Yeah, it was something I definitely had to do. And so I had to, I had to just that last hour of the day, I always had to get off the bike and push and cool, get a little bit of a cool down.
Yeah, interesting. So you're nearly 750 miles, 51 days, and you finally get to the point where you can see the end. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the South Pole is at 9,300 feet elevation, and it's the snow's going up and down these big valleys, basically, of big bowls of in and up and down. And so I'm watching the elevation on my GPS, kind of trying, because I just want to get up to 9,300 feet to where I can stop having to climb over and over and over. And so I'm watching it, and I'm watching the elevation go down. I'm getting all upset. At one point, I got so upset with my GPS that it was saying I was going downhill. There's no way I'm going downhill. So I chucked it off across the ice. And of course, that's not something you can continue on without. So I trudged out there and picked it up and brought it back. But it wasn't lying. I was going down, even though it seemed like that was too much work to be going downhill. And so I'm watching it going up and down and up and down. And then finally it got to where I hit 91, 92, and I hit 9,300 feet elevation. And it's like, okay, I'm finally up here. And I look off into the distance, and off in the distance I could see these 3 dots. And I wasn't sure at first, are they Sistrugi? Or, there's just something out there? Or is that the South Pole Station? Because there's a research center there. And I wasn't sure. And so I'm kind of watching it at first. And after a little bit, yep, that's it. And once I determined that was really it, I mean, it was just this feeling so excited, so happy. I mean, it's just the happiest thing that you could possibly imagine. It's just overcome with joy and happiness. I'm so happy. I can see it. So I get out my satellite phone, and I call up my wife, and I say, I can see it. I can see the South Pole. And she's like, what? And then the phone line dropped.
Oh no.
And so I don't know if I don't think she quite understood what I was saying. But and the other thing was it's hard for me to say. I can see it. This is it, because I was just crying and just overcome with emotion because I was there. I was going to be able to return back and be with my family. And I mean, I had finally gotten there. The hard part about that was still like 13 miles away. And there's a big drop back down, a big bowl that you have to go back down,
man.
clear down, and then back up. So I dropped back down in, and the South Pole all disappears when you get down into that bowl, and then go down in this thing, and then have to climb back up. But it was there's just no way to describe how wonderful it was to say, I'm there. I've accomplished. I'm going to return back and see my family, and how awesome that was.
Oh, I'll bet. What an amazing feeling. So was it the same day when you saw it 13 miles out? Was it the same day that you actually got to arrive at the South Pole?
It would have probably been, so that last day, I look at my GPS records, and it shows that it was 24 hours basically from the time I started that last push till I got to the South Pole. So I went 24 hours straight that last day, and it would have been about halfway, maybe a little less than half. Well, about half. The last part before you get to the South Pole, all the sastrugi disappear because the snow just starts getting soft. It doesn't pack together very well or anything, and so it gets really soft and difficult. And so that last the last 13 miles or so was almost entirely pushing the bike because it was just the snow just had become soft, and so it was slow travel. I was going slow at that point, so it took. And the other thing was I at that point I'm done. I know I'm done, and it's like as strange as it seems, I'm done, and I want to go home, but it's like I'll never be here again. This is an amazing place, and this is the only time I'll ever be able to be here. And so I stopped a lot and just kind of took things in and tried to understand, look and see what is up and what is down, and just enjoy that last day. And so I stopped a lot and just looked around, and I was going slow, and so that last while took a while, but it was a great time to just kind of reflect and just I was done, and so I didn't have to worry too much. I knew I was going to make it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, what I was blown away about was that there's actually a striped pole in the ground at the South Pole.
Yeah, they have. There's actually two poles they have at the South Pole. There's one that's actually where the South Pole is, and it's just kind of like a stick in the ground with an emblem on top, and then they have a striped pole with a mirror on top that's a little ways away from that, that's set up in front of with all the flags and the station and everything for taking pictures. But the spot that's the actual pole is kind of this stick in the ground and in the snow. And the reason for that is the ice is moving. And so it moves, I think, about 30 feet a year. And so every year they have to take that and reposition it where the South Pole is.
Wow, really?
And so yeah.
That's cool. Well, I saw that because you kept a blog about all this. So I wanted to point people to your blog if they want to go read along as you experience this. So the blog you can find at epicsouthpole.blogspot.com. And you also have your website, epicbiking.com. Now, do you still have the bike shop?
No, I closed the bike shop. Unfortunately, the bike shop, my problem, a lot of it, I think, is that my objective with the bike shop was more trying to get people out and active than it was trying to be a good businessman. And so So I wasn't making money with the bike shop, and I was working a lot. It was time to close the bike shop and and earn some money. And I mean, I got a lot of debt between the bike shop and the expedition that I have to pay off. So I am now working as a computer programmer again.
Yeah, I'm sure. Go back to what you know, right? Well, I mean, you had fun. You did your expedition, and you've helped spread the message to people to get out and do this stuff. So I think you've done a lot to give back to society by doing that, and you're also pushing the American Diabetes Association as well, from what I understand.
Yeah, I have always helped with the tour. The Tour de Cure is a 100-mile bike ride that they do every year, and I help with that. I work, do that, and so yeah. Diabetes has affected everybody, and I've seen people that I've seen somebody die from diabetes right in front of me, and so it's something that affects me personally, and so it's something that I like to do what I can to help with that.
Well, yeah, it's definitely an important thing to pay attention to. Well, I also want to invite people. I'm going to put the link up to your book because you wrote a book about this, and I want people to go check out the book. And hey, this guy had a great experience, a great expedition, but he's also, has done it to introduce to people the idea that they too can get out there and take control of their lives and take their lives back and do these kind of things. So if you want to read a great story, go pick up his book. It is South Pole Epic, and it's by Daniel Burton. So I'll put the link into our show notes so people can go find that book as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question would be, how has this changed your life? I mean, you're back to programming computers at this point, but this has got to be a major thing to take down the road with you. So how has it changed you?
Yeah, it's something that I'll always have, that I was able to do that. It helps. I mean, you hear all the time, you can do anything you want, anything you set your mind to, you can accomplish. And sometimes it just seems like a saying, right? But for me, that is now really true. If you really want to do something bad enough and you put the work into it and do it, you can accomplish amazing things. And so it's something that I can always draw back on and say, I can do these things that I want to do, and it's been great that way. I get to talk to great people like you. I just got back from a trip to China that somebody wanted me to come out and talk to them, and so it's given me a chance to do some fun things beyond that, and so yeah, it's been great.
Oh, absolutely. Well said. I love that you came on and helped us spread the message that adventure sports can do wonderful things for your life. So I appreciate you taking the time and coming on our show to do the same.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
A lot of us are looking for ways to start our day feeling more joy and appreciation. And while some of us write gratitude lists or do yoga, others pour themselves a bowl of their favorite cereal, Honey Nut Cheerios. Because not only are Honey Nut Cheerios delicious, they can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet. So maybe the secret to a great mood all day is a little yoga, then writing your gratitude list over a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. Learn more about a heart-healthy lifestyle at Cheerios.com.
On the Disney Plus original series, Turning the Tables with Robin Roberts, it's the Robin you know and love, bringing you the stories you've never heard. Join Robin for intimate conversations with some of the biggest icons of our time, where women from all generations create a dialogue about life, struggle, and triumph. At Robin's Table, inspiration comes full circle. Turning the Tables with Robin Roberts, all episodes now streaming on Disney Plus.